My fiancée left me after her influencer sister convinced her I wasn't in her league. Now she's broken, alone, and wants me back. I'm using a throwaway account because some people know my main, and this whole situation is still pretty fresh. Also, I'm typing this on my phone at 3 in the morning because I can't sleep, so sorry if the formatting is garbage. I guess I should start with some background about myself since that's pretty relevant to how this whole cluster went down. I'm a 29-year-old male who grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in what you'd call a typical middle-class family. My dad owned a small but successful plumbing business that he built from scratch, literally started with just him and a van, and now he's got 15 employees. My mom was an amazing elementary school teacher who everyone in our neighborhood knew and loved. They weren't rich or anything, but they taught me that honest work and smart money management were the keys to a good life. Maybe that's why I ended up becoming a financial advisor. I know, not exactly the most thrilling career. When I tell people what I do at parties, their eyes usually glaze over faster than a Dunkin' Donut. But honestly, I love my job. There's something really satisfying about helping regular people figure out their finances and plan for their future. Plus, the money's pretty decent, especially after I made partner at my firm last year. So anyway, back in the summer of 2018, my buddy Mike was having this massive barbecue at his new place. You know the type, the grill. Going all day, coolers full of craft beer because we're adults now, laugh out loud, and someone inevitably brings a guitar even though nobody asked for that. I almost didn't go because I had a bunch of client reports to finish, but Mike literally threatened to drag me there if I tried to bail. That's where I met Sarah. Holy guys, have you ever had one of those moments where you see someone across the room, and everything else just kind of fades away? That's what happened when I spotted this gorgeous redhead laughing at something by the fire pit. She had these incredible green eyes, and was wearing a simple sundress, but somehow managed to outshine everyone else there. It turns out Sarah worked in marketing for a tech startup downtown. She was smart as hell, could talk about literally anything, and had this weird obsession with true crime podcasts that I found weirdly endearing. We ended up talking until like 3 in the morning that night, just sitting on Mike's back porch while everyone else either left or passed out. Things moved pretty fast after that. We moved in together after a year because we were already spending every night at each other's places anyway, so it just made sense financially. Once a financial advisor, always a financial advisor, laughing my ass off. I proposed last summer during a trip to Traverse City, doing the whole romantic beach sunset thing. She cried, I cried. Random strangers on the beach cheered. It was perfect. Our life together was, man, it was everything I'd ever wanted. We had this awesome routine going. I'd get up early to make breakfast, learned how to make this insane French toast that Sarah swore was better than her mom's. Her mom agreed, by the way. We'd have coffee together, talk about our plans for the day, then head to work. Evenings were for cooking dinner together while dancing to 80s music. She got me hooked on Tears for Fears, or binge watching whatever new show we'd found. Weekends were the best though. Sometimes we'd do these mini road trips to random small towns in Michigan, trying out local restaurants and checking out weird tourist attractions. We found this amazing pie shop in the middle of nowhere that we'd drive an hour just to visit. Other weekends, we'd just stay home, do some gardening. I got really into growing vegetables during COVID. Or have friends over for game nights. We were that couple that other people would look at and be like, relationship goals. You know the type. The ones who still actually enjoy spending time together and don't just post about it on social media. We had our arguments, sure, but they were always about stupid stuff, like whose turn it was to clean the bathroom, or whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It absolutely does, fight me. We had all these plans for the future too. We'd already picked out a wedding venue, started looking at houses in this cute neighborhood near my office, and even talked about kids' names. Though we agreed to wait a few years on that. Sarah had this whole Pinterest board full of ideas for our dream home. She wanted one of those fancy kitchen islands and a reading nook by a bay window. I was saving up to make it all happen. Looking back now, I guess maybe things were too perfect. You know how they say if something seems too good to be true, it probably is? Yeah. It turns out that applies to relationships too. Because right when I thought I had everything figured out, right when all the pieces of my life were finally falling into place, that's when Sarah's sister, Polly, decided to pay us a surprise visit. Okay, so before I get into the absolute dumpster fire that Polly caused, you need to understand who Polly is. You know those people who make being an influencer their entire personality? That's Polly, but like, multiply that by 1,000 and add a hefty dose of superiority complex. Picture this: while Sarah and I were building our life in Michigan, living in our cozy apartment with our rescue cat, Mr. Whiskers. Yeah, basic name, but he came with it. Polly was living what she called her best life in Miami. And by best life, I mean posting daily Instagram stories about her entrepreneur grind, while actually living off her parents' money. No shade to people who get help from their parents, but at least be honest about it, you know? Polly was 32, but acted like she was perpetually 21. Her Instagram bio literally said, CEO of Living Life, with a sparkly emoji. She sold these ridiculously overpriced workout plans online, $299 for a PDF of basic exercises you could find on YouTube for free. But somehow she had like 50,000 followers who ate up everything she posted. Her content was all boss babe this, and create your own reality that. Pure toxic positivity wrapped in a face-tuned package. The thing that really got to me was how different the sisters were. When Polly wasn't around, Sarah was this down-to-earth, genuinely funny person who could hold conversations about actual topics. She volunteered at the local animal shelter on weekends, knew all our neighbors by name, and would bring soup to our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, whenever she wasn't feeling well. Just a genuinely good person, you know? But man, whenever Polly came around, it was like a switch flipped in Sarah's brain. Suddenly she'd start talking differently, using all these weird influencer phrases like manifest your dreams and align with your truth. She'd get super self-conscious about everything, our apartment, her job, even the way she dressed. One time she literally cried because we didn't have one of those stupid neon signs that say good vibes only in our living room. I tried to be understanding at first, like, I get it, sibling dynamics can be complicated. Sarah was the youngest of 3. Their brother Tom is cool though, he's a high school teacher in Chicago. But Polly had always been the exciting one. While Sarah was getting straight A's in high school, Polly was sneaking out to parties when Sarah was working her. Way up in her marketing career, Polly was finding herself in Bali, also known as posting bikini pics with inspirational quotes. The real problem started about 6 months before all this went down. Polly had just broken up with her latest boyfriend, some crypto bro named Chad, I'm not kidding, that was his actual name, and decided she needed to spread her wisdom to Sarah. She started sending these novels of text messages about how marriage was a construct designed to limit female power, and how settling down in your 20s was basically giving up on life. At first, Sarah would just laugh it off. She'd show me the messages, and we'd joke about how ridiculous they were. But then Polly started getting more aggressive. She'd send Sarah links to articles about divorce rates and early marriages, or tag her in Instagram posts about living your truth and not settling. It was like this constant drip of poison, you know? I remember this one specific night, about 2 months before everything fell apart. We were having dinner with Polly during one of her surprise visits. She'd show up randomly, claiming she was in the area, even though Miami to Michigan isn't exactly a casual trip. She spent the entire meal talking about her amazing life, the parties, the guys, the networking events, also known as more parties. Then she looked at Sarah with this fake concerned expression and said, "Don't you miss having adventures, sis? Don't you want more than just this?" The way she said this while gesturing at our apartment, our home that we'd built together, made my blood boil. But Sarah just sat there, pushing her food around her plate, looking like someone had just told her Santa wasn't real. I should have said something then, should have called Polly out on her manipulative nonsense, but I didn't want to cause drama or make Sarah uncomfortable. Plus, I honestly didn't think Sarah would ever buy into Polly's lifestyle. She'd always been the sensible one, you know? We'd literally spent the weekend before planting our wedding flowers and laughing about how neither of us wanted anything too Instagram-worthy. God, I was so naive. The worst part? Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs. The way Sarah started spending more time on Instagram, how she'd get quiet after her phone calls with Polly, the sudden interest in meditation apps and manifestation journals. It was like watching someone slowly get pulled into a cult, but the cult leader was their own sister. This part is actually pretty hard to write, even months later, but you guys deserve the full story, so here goes. It was a Tuesday in April. The weather was finally starting to warm up in Michigan, and I remember being stupidly happy about being able to wear just a light jacket to work. The night before, Sarah and I had stayed up late planning our honeymoon. We were thinking about doing this road trip through the Pacific Northwest, hitting up all these little towns and national parks. She was excited about finding these weird roadside attractions, like the world's largest ball of twine or whatever. Just typical dorky couple stuff, you know? That morning started so normal, it hurts to think about now. I got up at 6:30, like always, let Mr. Whiskers out of our bedroom, he has this thing about sleeping at our feet, and started making breakfast. It was French toast morning, Sarah's favorite. I'd perfected this recipe over the years. Thick-cut brioche bread, lots of cinnamon, a splash of vanilla, and this maple syrup we'd gotten from a tiny farm in Vermont during our last road trip. Sarah came down wearing this blue sweater I'd gotten her for Christmas. She seemed fine, tired maybe, but it was Tuesday morning. Who isn't tired? We ate breakfast together, talked about some show we'd started watching the night before. She kissed me goodbye, told me she loved me, and headed out to work. I remember thinking about how lucky I was, how perfect everything was. Funny how life likes to punch you in the gut right when you're feeling on top of the world, huh? I had a pretty normal day at work, had a couple of client meetings, grabbed lunch with a coworker, sent Sarah a few random memes that made me think of her. She left them on read, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. Around 3 in the afternoon she texted, saying she was heading home early because she wasn't feeling great. I offered to pick up soup from that Vietnamese place she likes, but she just replied with, "No thanks." I should have known something was up then. Sarah never turns down pho when she's sick. When I got home around 6, the apartment felt wrong. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and can just tell something bad is about to happen? Like the air is too thick or something? Yeah, it was like that. Sarah was sitting on our couch, already halfway through a bottle of wine. She never day drinks unless something's seriously wrong. There was this empty look in her eyes that I'd never seen before, and she wouldn't look directly at me. Mr. Whiskers, who usually runs to greet me at the door, was nowhere to be seen. "We need to talk," she said, and my stomach just dropped. Nobody in the history of relationships has ever said we need to talk, and followed it up with good news. I sat down across from her, still wearing my work clothes, still holding my laptop bag like some kind of shield. "What's going on?" I asked, even though part of me already knew. The signs had been there, I just hadn't wanted to see them. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she started, taking another big sip of wine, "about life, about what I want, about everything." She was using these weird hand gestures while she talked, something she'd picked up from Polly, and I don't think I can do this anymore. "Do what?" I asked, like an idiot, as if I didn't know exactly what she meant. "This," she said, waving her hand around our apartment, at all the little things we'd collected together over the years, the stupid ceramic penguin we'd found at a thrift store, the photos from our trips, the wedding planning binder sitting on the coffee table. "I feel like I'm suffocating." Then came the part that really killed me. She started talking about how she'd been talking to Polly a lot lately, how Polly had opened her eyes to what she was missing out on, how she needed to find herself before she could settle down. It was like listening to someone read off a script of every basic breakup cliché, but with Polly's influencer buzzwords mixed in. She kept using phrases like living authentically and aligning with my truth. At one point she actually said, "I need to understand who Sarah is before I can be Sarah plus someone else." I wanted to scream, "You are Sarah. You're the Sarah who loves true crime podcasts and hates cilantro and cries at dog food commercials." But I didn't say any of it. I just sat there, watching 5 years of my life crumble, while Sarah talked about personal growth and spiritual journeys like she was reading off Polly's Instagram captions. The worst part? She'd already packed a bag while I was at work, thinking about what kind of soup to bring my sick fiancé. She was packing up her life into a suitcase. She was moving in with Polly temporarily while she figured things out. Before she left, she took off her engagement ring, the one that had belonged to my grandmother, and just left it on the coffee table like it was nothing, like it was some piece of costume jewelry she'd gotten tired of. After she left, I just sat there for hours, staring at that ring. Mr. Whiskers finally came out from wherever he'd been hiding and curled up in my lap, purring like he knew I needed it. The French toast dishes from that morning were still in the sink. Her coffee mug, the one with little foxes on it that I'd gotten her for our first Christmas together, was still in the dishwasher. You know what's really messed up? That night, while I was sitting there trying to figure out how my entire life had just imploded, Sarah was already posting on her Instagram story. Nothing direct, just one of those vague quotes about choosing yourself and starting new chapters. She'd even used one of those sunset filters, real classy. After Sarah left, I went through all the stages of grief in like 48 hours. First came denial. I literally sat on our couch until 4 a.m, convinced she'd come back and say it was all a mistake. Then came anger. I may or may not have thrown her stupid good vibes only coffee mug against the wall. Sorry, not sorry. Depression hit hard. I called in sick to work for 2 days and basically just existed on the couch with Mr. Whiskers and leftover Chinese food. But then something weird happened. You know how Netflix always asks, "Are you still watching?" after you've been binge-watching shows for too long? Well, when I clicked yes for like the 100th time, I noticed something. Sarah was still logged into our shared account, and under continue watching, there was some show I'd never heard of, being watched at 2 a.m. at some dude's place. Yeah, let that sink in. My fiancé, who less than a week ago was planning our wedding and honeymoon, was already Netflix and chilling with someone else. And because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment, and maybe because I'd had a few beers, I decided to do some digging. First stop, Instagram. Sarah's main account was pretty much what you'd expect. Lots of inspirational quotes about new beginnings and finding yourself. Some pictures of her and Polly at various Miami clubs. The usual post-breakup social media performance. But then I remembered something. Sarah had this weird habit of making separate accounts for different things. She had one just for posting about books she'd read, another for her attempts at cooking. So, I tried a hunch. You know how when you create a new Instagram account, it suggests people to follow? Well, if you use the same email address for multiple accounts, they're all kind of linked. It took me about 10 minutes of trying combinations of her usual username, but holy guys, I found it, a whole secret Instagram account. And let me tell you, what I found made me realize our entire relationship had been a lie. The account was private, but she'd used the same password she used for everything, her mom's name plus her birth year. I'd told her a million times to use better passwords. What I found was like watching a car crash in slow motion, except the car was my relationship, and it had actually been on fire for months without me noticing. The account was full of direct messages between her and Polly, going back to January. They'd been planning this whole escape from suburban life thing like it was some kind of prison break. Polly would send her these long messages about how she was so proud of Sarah for finally waking up and choosing freedom. There were screenshots of conversations with this guy, Jake, some finance bro Polly had introduced her to at a party back in February, when Sarah was supposedly visiting her parents. The messages between Sarah and Jake made me physically sick. Nothing explicitly cheating, but lots of what-if conversations and flirty little exchanges. What if we'd met first? What if you weren't engaged? Meanwhile, I'm at home growing tomatoes in our garden and planning surprise date nights like an idiot. But here's the real kicker. All those times Sarah was working late or having girls' night with coworkers in the months before she left, she was actually on video calls with Polly and her Miami friends, planning her new fabulous life. They had this whole group chat called Sarah's Liberation, where they'd talk about me and our boring life together. You want to know how detailed this planning was? They had a whole spreadsheet, an actual spreadsheet, with tabs for everything, clubs to visit, guys to meet, yeah, Jake wasn't the only one, even a glow-up schedule for Sarah, with appointments for hair extensions, nail maintenance, and something called tooth gems. I had to Google that one. Apparently it's like jewelry for your teeth. One conversation from March really stuck with me. Sarah had posted a picture of us at my nephew's birthday party. We were both covered in cake because my 5-year-old nephew thought it would be hilarious to start a food fight. We were laughing, happy, just genuinely enjoying life. Polly commented on it in their private chat. Ugh, you look so basic here. Can't wait until you're living your best life with us instead of playing house in the suburbs. Sarah's response? Just a few more months of pretending. A few more months of pretending. Those words kept echoing in my head. While I was planning our future, she was planning her escape. While I was looking at houses in good school districts because she'd always talked about wanting kids, she was looking at party dresses and making plans with other guys. The worst part? There were pictures of her trying on wedding dresses with her mom. Right around the same time she was messaging Jake about how confused she was about her feelings. Pictures of her crying happy tears in this beautiful white dress, captioned, "Can't wait to marry my best friend." Posted the same day she was in Jake's DMs talking about how she felt trapped in our relationship. I found myself going through old photos of us, trying to spot the moment where it all changed. Was she faking it in that picture from New Year's, where she's looking at me like I'm her whole world? What about our anniversary dinner in March? The weekend trip to the lake in April? When did my fiancée become such a good actress? The more I dug, the more it felt like I was reading about a stranger. This wasn't the Sarah I knew, the girl who cried at ASPCA commercials and spent 3 hours making a get-well card for our elderly neighbor. This was some poly-influenced pod person who talked about vibes and energy and treated our relationship like it was some kind of temporary pit stop on her way to a better life. For about 3 months after Sarah left, I had to watch their whole Miami adventure unfold on social media, like some twisted reality show. Sarah and Polly were living their best life, all designer outfits, rooftop parties, and fancy restaurants. Every post was tagged with something like #living-authentically, or #choosing-me, or my personal favorite, #no regrets. Jake was a constant presence in their posts, though they tried to be subtle about it. You know the type. Those accidental group shots where he's conveniently next to Sarah, or stories where you can hear his voice in the background. They thought they were being so slick, but it was about as subtle as a drunk elephant in a china shop. Sarah had completely transformed herself into Polly too. Gone was the girl who used to spend Sundays in her pajamas reading true crime books. Now she was all crop tops and hair extensions, posting daily affirmations and trying to start her own wellness coaching business, also known as selling the same overpriced workout plans as Polly. She even started talking with that weird influencer vocal fry that Polly uses. It was like watching someone have a quarter-life crisis in real time. But then, about 3 months into their fabulous new life, something amazing happened. I was scrolling through Instagram one morning, drinking my coffee and mentally preparing for another day of pretending to be okay, when I saw it, a post from Polly that would change everything. There she was, standing on some beach in Malibu, not Miami, this detail becomes important, wearing a white bikini and holding up her left hand to show off this massive engagement ring. The caption read, "He asked, and my soul said yes, ready to start forever with my twin flame." Now, you might be thinking, okay, so Polly got engaged, so what? Well, here's where it gets good. Tech bro Tyler, yes, that was his actual handle, was this startup founder from Seattle, who Polly had apparently been dating in secret for the past 6 months. And the best part? They were moving to Seattle like immediately. The same sister who had spent months preaching about how marriage was a societal construct, and settling down was basic, had been secretly planning her own wedding, the entire time she was convincing Sarah to blow up her life. You really can't make this stuff up. Sarah found out about it the same way everyone else did, through Instagram. According to my friend Mike, who's still friends with Sarah's brother Tom, she had a complete meltdown. She called Polly, screaming about betrayal and hypocrisy. But Polly just hit her with the same spiritual buzzwords she'd been using on Sarah. "I'm just following my truth, and the universe has a plan." But wait, it gets better. Remember Jake, Mr. Perfect, who was supposedly so much better than boring old me? Well, it turns out Jake had been following his truth with about 3 other girls the whole time he was seeing Sarah. One of them found out about the others and made a whole TikTok exposing him, complete with screenshots and everything. It went semi-viral in their Miami social circle. Sarah tried to play it cool online, posting stuff like everything happens for a reason and trust the journey. But behind the scenes, she was falling apart. Without Polly there to bankroll their fabulous lifestyle. Oh yeah, forgot to mention, Polly had been paying for most of their partying. Sarah was struggling. It turns out those wellness coaching plans weren't selling as well as she'd hoped. She had to move out of Polly's Miami apartment since Polly was selling it. Couldn't afford the lifestyle she'd gotten used to, and was basically stranded in a city where she had no real friends, just a bunch of party acquaintances who disappeared real quick when the free drinks dried up. The final cherry on top? One night, probably after a few too many drinks, Sarah posted this long, rambling Instagram story about how some people aren't who they pretend to be, and how true sisters don't abandon sisters. She tagged Polly in it. Polly's response? She blocked Sarah on everything. Just like that, the whole house of cards came tumbling down. All those inspirational quotes about choosing yourself and living your best life suddenly disappeared from Sarah's feed, replaced by vague posts about healing and learning hard lessons. I watched all of this unfold from the safety of my couch, usually with Mr. Whiskers on my lap. Was it petty of me to feel satisfaction? Maybe. But after everything they'd put me through, watching karma do its thing felt pretty damn good. I finally started putting myself back together. I started going to the gym again. Turns out anger is a great pre-workout. I got back into my old hobbies, finally finished restoring that vintage record player I'd been working on, and even started enjoying my own company. Mr. Whiskers and I had our routine down: morning coffee on the balcony, work, maybe some video games or a book in the evening. It wasn't exciting by Instagram standards, but it was peaceful. That's when I met Emma. And no, it wasn't some rom-com moment where we locked eyes across a crowded coffee shop or anything like that. It was actually at this really boring tax law conference in Chicago. I was there representing my firm, trying not to fall asleep during a presentation about recent changes in retirement account regulations. When someone asked this really intelligent question about Roth IRA conversions, I turned around to see who asked it, and there was this woman in a perfectly tailored navy suit, with these smart glasses and this subtle undercut that somehow made her look both professional and badass at the same time. During the break, I worked up the courage to talk to her about her question. Yes, I'm enough of a finance nerd that I use tax law as a pickup line. Don't judge. Emma turned out to be this brilliant tax attorney who could talk about fiscal policy with the same enthusiasm that most people reserve for their favorite TV shows. But here's the thing. She was also funny as hell, like, actually funny, not Instagram caption funny. She had this dry wit that could make even the most boring tax regulations sound entertaining. We ended up ditching the afternoon sessions and spending hours at this little cafe near the conference center, talking about everything from tax brackets to true crime podcasts. It turns out we're both obsessed with the same ones. It was just easy, no pretense, no performance. Just two people genuinely enjoying each other's company. When I got back to Michigan, we started texting, then video calling, then taking turns making the 3-hour drive between our cities every other weekend. Emma was different from anyone I'd ever dated. She was ambitious, yeah, but not in that artificial #girlboss way. She worked her ass off because she genuinely loved what she did, not because she was trying to prove anything to anyone. The first time she came to my place, she brought her own coffee beans, she's a total coffee snob, and spent the morning teaching me how to use this fancy pour-over method she swears by. We made a complete mess of my kitchen, but it was the most fun I'd had in months. She didn't even ask why I had a cat tree but no wedding photos on the walls anymore. She just helped me clean up the coffee grounds and suggested we try making French toast next, complete with orange zest because, apparently, she's a breakfast perfectionist too. That's why, when Sarah showed up at my door one rainy night in October, I wasn't even angry anymore, just tired. She looked exactly like you'd expect someone who just had their perfect life implode to look. Mascara running, hair a mess, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaking. Classic Sarah timing. She'd probably seen my recent Instagram post with Emma at my cousin's wedding and decided now was the time to have a heart-to-heart. I let her in because, well, I'm not a complete jerk. Mr. Whiskers took one look at her and promptly disappeared into the bedroom. Cats really do have the best judgment, don't they? She sat on the couch, the new one I'd bought to replace the one we'd picked out together, and started crying. What followed was the most predictable conversation ever. How she'd made a huge mistake, how Polly had manipulated her, how Jake was a player. Shocking, I know. How she missed our life together. How she'd been doing a lot of thinking and realized what she'd thrown away. The old me would have eaten this up, would have seen it as a sign that everything could go back to normal. But sitting there, listening to her talk, all I could think about was how Emma and I had spent the previous weekend building this ridiculous blanket fort in my living room because it was raining and we were bored. How we'd lain there talking about our future. Real talks about career goals and life plans. Not just Instagram-worthy moments. "I think we could try again," Sarah said finally, looking at me with those green eyes that used to make my heart skip a beat. "I'm different now. I know what I want." That's when I got up, walked to my phone that was charging on the kitchen counter, and pulled up the photo from my cousin's wedding. It was a candid shot of Emma and me laughing at something my drunk uncle had said. Emma's head was thrown back in genuine laughter, her hand on my chest, while I looked at her like she was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. I showed it to Sarah. "I'm different now, too," I said quietly, "and I know what I want." The look on her face, it was like watching someone finally understand that some things can't be fixed with a carefully crafted apology and an Instagram-worthy reconciliation moment. She started crying again, but this time I didn't feel the need to comfort her. "You should go," I said, not unkindly. "It's getting late and Emma's coming over for breakfast tomorrow. She's teaching me how to make croissants from scratch." As Sarah walked to the door, she paused and turned around. "Are you happy?" she asked, like she couldn't quite believe it was possible to be happy without her. I thought about Emma, about our stupid coffee experiments and blanket forts, about how she sends me terrible puns in the middle of workdays and actually listens when I geek out about financial regulations. "Yeah," I said, "I really am." After she left, I texted Emma, "You won't believe who just showed up." Her response was perfect. "Do we need to make stress croissants tonight instead of waiting for morning? I can be there in 3 hours with emergency butter." That's when I knew for sure. Sometimes the worst things that happen to you end up leading you to the best things in your life.